Hi everyone, it's Megan. We're back in the library today. I'm a high school librarian and finally making a new video. We've all been sick. It's been a whole thing. Anyway, I'm hopefully back to making at least weekly videos, maybe more. So today I want to talk to you about some books that I think you would like if you didn't like another book that was similar, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll read a book expecting one thing and really hoping for it, and then I don't get it. So I'm going to try to give you a book that would actually satisfy your craving for whatever it is that you were originally craving that you didn't get. So let's get started. So the first book that I had a craving for one time was a good murder mystery, young adult, nothing too in-depth or crazy, nothing too scary. And I thought Truly Devious was going to be it because it was about a girl who disappeared and somebody years later trying to solve her disappearance. And I thought this sounded great. There were going to be clues. It was going to be a series. However, it turned out it was really slow and boring. I didn't care really about anything that was happening. And it was a trilogy, or maybe even more. Are there 4 of them now? I don't even know. And you don't even get the full story in this one. You still don't find out what happened, and it drags on too long for something that's not that interesting over the span of like 3 books or whatever. So if you were looking for a good murder mystery type thing where a girl disappears and another girl years later has to solve it and use clues to do so and follow the trail, the book for you would be A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. In fact, this book is so popular, we had 8 copies and they're all checked out from our school library. I just read this book on audio, just finished it last night. It is wonderful. Definitely recommend the audio book as well because it does have like a full cast of people who play like the different characters. And this is fascinating. It's well written. It just keeps you on the edge of your seat. You want to know what's next. There's all kinds of clues. The main character really gets sucked into the mystery and is possibly in danger herself, which is what Truly Devious is supposed to be as well, but not near as good. In this story though, the murder only happened like 5 years before, whereas in Truly Devious it was like many years before. But anyway, the trail is still warm that way because she's able to kind of interview the suspects. She comes up with a list of suspects, but it's so fast paced and it was very reminiscent of Pretty Little Liars. If you liked that show, this feels like it's really similar to Pretty Little Liars, even to the point that there's like someone blackmailing other people potentially, so hope that's not really a spoiler, but kind of like in Pretty Little Liars where there's like the A character or whatever, and you don't even know if the main character might even still be alive, or the girl that disappeared. She could still be alive potentially because no one's ever found her body, just like in Pretty Little Liars. So there's a lot going on in this book, and I highly, highly recommend it if you want a good, unsolved mystery. So the next book is 10,000 Doors of January by Alexi Harrow. Were you looking for a good portal fantasy that was fast-paced and had characters traveling to different worlds? This is not it. It's not fast-paced. You really don't get to go to many other worlds, even though it's called 10,000 Doors. You don't really go through very many doors. It's pretty slow-moving. If you like the writing style, very just kind of, I don't know, what's the word to describe it? Do they have a good word on here? Not really, but just really, I don't know, descriptive, kind of flowery language, but not really much happening, and you don't really care too much about any of the characters. Well, do I have the book for you to read instead? Now, it's not exactly similar, so I mean, don't think it's like exactly the same, but I would recommend A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is short, first of all, but it is more of a portal fantasy where it's about the 4 different versions of London, and you actually do get to go to the different versions of London and see them, except for Black London, which has been destroyed by magic, but you want to know what it looks like, and you're so intrigued by it. So there's Grey London, which is our version of London, where there is no more there is no magic at all, and it's really boring. Then there's Red London, where the main character is from, and that is full of magic. Magic is thriving there. Then there's White London, where they're starved for magic. They used to have magic, they don't anymore, and they try to do anything to get it. It's a very bleak world. And then Black London, which was destroyed by magic. So these worlds, even though there are only 4 of them and you really only see 3, are fascinating compared to the 10,000 Doors of January, where you don't get to see any of the worlds, hardly at all. And it is very, very fast-paced. I still didn't really care too much about the characters necessarily, but the plot is so good and so fast-moving, and there's so much promise and potential, although, as we know, books 2 and 3 I did not like. So I would honestly stop at this one, but just the potential that it had, because there's all these other kind of mysteries and other things that you're wondering, ooh, what's that about? That it makes it just really, really fascinating. So I highly recommend this book. Okay, the next one is Library of the Unwritten. If you checked out this book or bought it, heaven forbid, in hopes that it was going to be a book about books, then you were disappointed because it was not really very interesting. I honestly only read a little over half of it and then I DNF'd it myself. Girl lives in kind of this, what was it, like a version of hell or something, where there's unwritten books, basically. I can't even remember the premise, honestly. It wasn't really that good. But basically, if you're wanting a book about books and this did not satisfy your craving for that, then I highly recommend The City of Dreaming books by Walter Moores, something like that. This was translated from, was it German? I believe it's German. And it's a whole series as well, but this one is the one that is probably the most popular. It's the only one I've read. Ooh, I had to stop and smell it. It is super weird. If you can get past the fact that the main character, and in fact, kind of just ignore the fact that the main character is a dinosaur, named Optimus Yarn Spinner, then you will love this book. This is a book about books, and it's definitely for book lovers. It's a city called Bookholm, which is the city of dreaming books. It's like this book-obsessed metropolis, and underneath there's this like these catacombs basically, and there's this thing called the Shadow King. It says cold-blooded book hunters, fearsome cyclopean booklings, sharp-toothed anatomes, and of course the Shadow King, whose howls rise deep from the deep beneath the city at night. Will Optimus Yarn Spinner survive his quest into this world where reading is a genuine adventure? So it's a fantastic tale for every book lover. It is so whimsical and fun and so detailed. I highly recommend this if you are looking for a book about books and the Library of the Unwritten or any other book that you've read about books did not satisfy your craving for that. The next book is The Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. I don't know how to say these words. Anyway, if you were looking for a magical world that was a young adult fantasy novel, or I'm honestly going to lump pretty much any young adult fantasy novel into the category with this one. I only read about 100 pages of this years ago before I DNF'd it, so honestly, I don't remember it either. A book with maps and different kingdoms and, cool magic systems and interesting characters and a fast-moving plot, and that this did not satisfy your craving for that, or any other young adult fantasy novel did not, then boy, do I have the book for you. And that is my new all-time favorite young adult fantasy novel, Ray Bear by Jordan Ifueko. Oh my gosh, I cannot say enough good things about this book. It is the most intense world building in a young adult novel that I have ever read. So, besides something like Harry Potter, if you count that, but that's more like urban fantasy kind of because it's set in the real world. But if you want a book set in another fantasy world, this is the book for you. It is not that long. It's so good. It's a duology. I'm reading the second one right now. I just started it. It is just so complex. I don't even want to tell you what it's about because honestly, the plot, if you read this happens within the first 100 pages or less. I remember marking it in the book when I was reading it and I was like, what is the rest of this book about? And that's why it's so fascinating, because even if you think you know what it's about, it's not about that. And it just goes really off the rails. At one point I even wrote down in the book, I was like, wow, is this turning into a jungle adventure novel or something? So if you want in-depth world building, although the only problem with this one is that the characters besides the main character are not really very interesting, but the plot is so good and it's so fast-paced, then this is definitely the book for you. Okay, so the next book that you might have had a craving for, like a Japanese-inspired young adult fantasy novel, Forest of Souls, perhaps, by Lori M. Lee, I think was her name. Our copy's actually checked out right now. I think there's even a sequel now to Broken Web. I just saw it. We just got it in. But if you were looking for this Japanese-inspired, intriguing, mysterious novel that's, just keeps you on the edge of your seat as well, that it's fast-paced, and that this was not it, because this book was really super just meh. I remember reading it having no feelings one way or the other. So if that was you as well, and you want something like a Japanese-inspired fantasy novel, go for Seven Deadly Shadows by Courtney Alameda and Valen E. Matani. This book was so good for a young adult book. The two authors actually went to Japan and did research. They traveled around, went to places, went to these shrines and various things to kind of really get inspiration for this book, and also to be able to describe everything. They even described the food that she was eating on the train. It is set in the real world, which I actually kind of like because it's able to draw on, true kind of, not really mythology, but it does have Japanese mythology as well, like with this Shinigami. She has to enlist the help of 7 ruthless Shinigami death gods to stop the destruction of mankind. because her family shrine has been attacked by a band of yokai demons. With the help of Shiro, who's the shrine's gorgeous half-fox, half-boy kitsune, she discovers that her shrine harbors an ancient artifact of great power, one that this demon lord is going to use to bring everlasting darkness upon the world. So it kind of reminds me of the plot of Forest of Souls, but it's so much better. Highly, highly recommend this one. Okay, our last book recommendation is going to be if you wanted to read Empire of the Vampire or any vampire novel and you were not satisfied because you wanted something dark and, you know, just true gothic vampire literature, and that this was not it, because this is laughable and like so bad. I mean, it's like comically bad. I know some people love it, and I'm so sorry that I don't agree with you. I think it is. I saw somebody online say it was hot garbage, and I have to say that's probably what I would say this is as well. It's just like trying to be all dark and like goth and emo. It's like if you imagine some like kid that's trying to be emo or something. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but it's so cheesy and so bad, and all the word choices and like all the ridiculous stuff that the author has come up with to try to make this sound cool, but it's not. It's like he's trying too hard. If you also felt the same way and you want a good vampire book, then I cannot recommend more highly to you the absolute classic of Interview with the Vampire. In fact, all Empire of the Vampire did is make me want to read Interview with the Vampire. It was also set up in literally an interview format. And I was like, wait, what? Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Like, could this be any more of a copy of the setup of Interview with the Vampire? It was also kind of like the setup of Name of the Wind as well, where he's gonna like tell his story from the beginning, but it like jumps around in time. I don't know. Anyway, oh, that's a good one. This is my old-fashioned signed copy, of course, for Megan. I always read that part. So this book is the all-time classic. I don't even probably have to tell you what it's about. It's about Lestat and Louis and a child vampire. You've probably heard of this, but it's so well written. Yes, it is descriptive and detailed, and if you want to know about the lush, you know, foliage of New Orleans, then this is going to give you that. And some people don't want that, but it also talks about, you know, life and death and existential, deeper, darker questions and mysteries of the universe and things that the characters ask themselves now that they're vampires. I feel like the whole vampire thing is really more of a metaphor for everything else going on in this book and describing, you know, just bigger questions about life and God and existence and stuff anyway. So that's really an immortality and things like that, and mortality. So if that interests you and you ask big questions about life like that, then this will probably be more the book for you. Yes, it's not very fast paced, but stuff does happen, and this one's just an all-time classic. Highly, highly recommend. Don't read Empire of the Vampire, read Interview with the Vampire if you want a good vampire book. So hopefully this was helpful. Maybe you found some books that you might want to read instead of some other books, or maybe you've never read any of these books before and it made you want to check something out. So hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.